Jake, introduce yourself for us.
Sure. My name is Jake Lyons. I very much am humbled and appreciate you guys having me on tonight. I'm a CFRE, that stands for Certified Fundraising Executive. I do fundraising full-time. I'm also a CNP, which is a Certified Nonprofit Professional, which is a little more broad business management certification for nonprofits. I work full-time as a fundraising consultant, mostly in health systems. I do a lot of healthcare stuff. I'm on the education faculty for the local United Way chapter. I teach fundraising for all the local Chattanooga nonprofits. I'm on a few other fundraising faculties as well, but fundraising education is what I do. It's very, very rewarding. It's very, very exciting. And the band world needs a lot more of it. Most recently, at the beginning of the pandemic, I started an organization from scratch called Virtual Arts. We raised, I think, right at $50,000 to get started. And obviously, have since done more since then, have grown since then, but we did the virtual drum corps project and then did virtual marching band this fall, and we've partnered with WGI to do the WGI community project, which Michael, I know you're designing for, which is super exciting.
Yeah, I'm excited about that.
Yeah, so that's kind of my background. Did a lot of band. I taught at Spirit and the Colts and Palmetto Percussion and Equinox Percussion after having marched the Bluecoats and Music City Mystique. So been kind of in both worlds for a while, but I do a non-band job for my full-time job, and band's just kind of my hobby and passion. So.
But you know what bands need, you know?
Yeah, I hope so. I try to.
Amazing.
So you and I got really, well, first off, we marched together in WGI.
We did indoor together. It was a lot of fun.
That was a very fun year and group.
Yeah,
but we continued that relationship with Equinox when you were the executive director. Mm-hmm. And you had that thing running smoother than any WGI group I'd ever been around, especially funds wise. And Equinox wasn't totally from the ground up because it was kind of a branch from Palmetto. But I know a lot of people have wanted to launch independent ensembles, but they have a lot of fears over what is it like to run a business, because a lot of people in music education, I'm from a physical therapy background, so we do healthcare. Music educators tend to do music. We don't know, unless we've gone through some proper schooling or had a business before, really where to start. So can you help people from the ground up what to have in their mindset as far as what they need to do from a funding perspective, setting things
Sure.
up?
No, absolutely. I inherited a great organization when I took over for Equinox, so I had a lot of help. But we did a lot of fundraising stuff too. We bought a trailer, outfitted it, custom fitted it, and obviously you're doing fairly well with all of that. But a lot of what I learned in working in independent ensembles was kind of what not to do as an industry. Everyone does kind of the small fundraisers. They do lots of them a year. They do them all spread out throughout the year. They're going through and they're selling candles or mattresses or candy, or they're doing small events and stuff. And it's exhausting. Not to say that those things don't make money, because they really do. And that's why bands do them, is because they're profitable. But they really burn out your volunteers and your parents and your members who are already doing school and on top of the commitments for performing and all of that. So it's just hard. So if I could give one piece of advice, just kind of blanket, it's please stop doing those small fundraising events. People say, oh, we raised $10,000 in one night. It was so successful. We had this event. It was $10,000. It's like, yeah, but you spent 4 months planning for that thing. Like, you spent so much time. How many volunteer hours? How many, like, all of the effort that went into it 4 months, was that worth $10,000? You guys could have gotten a minimum wage job and made 10 times that if you just pooled your money at the end. The asks are low. There are people who would give more, but they're like, well, I'll buy 4 candles. I don't really need more than that, even though I want to do more for the activity, or I want to do more for this nonprofit. And I say this mostly, what I'm talking about primarily applies to high school band programs, band boosters, and independent ensembles. Drum corps is kind of their own different animal. Reason being, they have a lot of fans. The way they can structure, the way they can market and all of that, they have a fan base in addition to an alumni base and parents and members. So they have a little bit more of an advantage in that way. It's harder for a high school band program. I mean, you have the fans of the people who go to that school, maybe live in that town, but it's tough. It's tough outside of that. You don't have a lot of people outside of your county, unless you're, Chino Hills, who are fans of your program. So all this kind of applies to small town band programs who are like, we are at our wits end because we've tried everything. We do these fundraisers. People get burnt out. We go back to the same people every time. And it doesn't pick up the high ticket donors and sponsors. So that was all of what not to do. In terms of what you actually should be doing is what I call just peer-to-peer asking. So in a diversified portfolio, you'd have a lot of different things. You have a lot of different investments spread around. It's the same thing in fundraising, but it all is based around just personal relationships, one-on-one asks, where I'd go up to you and I'd say, Elliot, for the band program this year, I've decided to commit $1,000 specifically toward their trailer campaign. I would love to have you join me at that same level. And at that point, we have made $2,000 faster than you could sell any amount of candy or force the kids to do it. So kind of as a blanket statement, you want to work on and focus on the peer-to-peer relationships, getting volunteers in place. If you don't have a band boosters, specifically dedicated volunteers dedicated just to fundraising, that's huge. If they don't have proper training and know how to use, kind of those tools and techniques appropriately, definitely helps to get them that. And the other thing is to raise money for something really specific. It used to be we could say, hey, we're the band or we're the charity or we're whatever. We promise we'll spend your money wisely. Donors are getting a little more selective these days, especially in COVID. And we've seen this, the research supports this, where they're saying, that's fine. Where specifically is my gift going? What am I actually giving money to? So if you say, hey, we're building a trailer, or we need all new rifles, or whatever the thing is, if we can be really specific about what we're asking for, this is why we need $32,000. It covers the following things. They'll last this amount of years. They give us this amount of value. Would you contribute X dollar amount? And that's huge, and it's hugely successful. So to kind of go down this, I go through this exercise with all of my students and people who ask me for help or advice on fundraising, is you go down and you make your top 25 list of anybody that you know who might contribute to either your member dues or the group or the band program or whatever. Just brain dump, 25 names. The next thing you do is you kind of go through and you rank and you pick your top 10. And like from most likely to give to least likely to give. And then you can rank those people on their ability to give. This gets a little weird, so you have to kind of this is a list for you, it's private. And you kind of rank them 1 to 5. 5 is these people probably have the means to give a pretty substantial gift, and maybe in the thousands of dollars perhaps. And then 1 is, they're really dedicated, they could give $25, $50. But from what I know about them, I'm assuming that's going to be a stretch for them, and that would be generous for them. It's important that everyone participates, but everyone's situation is different. A meaningful gift for me is different than a meaningful gift from someone else. So we have to be very, very conscious of those things, obviously. So you kind of go down, you rank them 1 to 5, and you set up personal meetings with personal asks. These days, those are Zoom calls. You're calling them on the phone and say, hey, I would love to sit down and talk with you. Can we do it over Zoom? It's a little safer right now. I'd love to chat with you about this. And even if you're fundraising for your dues for drum corps, I've never had a student not go down that list of 10 and get their entire dues covered. And you can apply the same concept exactly towards fundraising campaigns. If you had your entire band do this, or all of your volunteers, all of your parents do this as well, you get to those numbers really, really easy. And you're in the tens of thousands at that point. So if you're like, oh, we need a new whatever, it's $60,000, we're a tiny program. It's like, that's so possible. Just do the right things. I promise you the money is there. If you execute correctly, if you do the industry best practice stuff, it literally will exist. Like I promise you, it works 100% of the time. It's work, but if you're not doing all those little fundraisers all year and everyone's not burnt out, then that's it. Do one big thing a year, saying, hey, we're going to fund everything around this, but we're going to have this one big fundraiser year. We're going to raise $60,000, $30,000, whatever. And that's going to be our fundraiser for the year. For a big Texas band, it might be more. It might be $200,000. And that's not unusual. For a small town rural band in Iowa, it might be 15, and that's big for them. So it's hard to say, oh, this is how you do it, blanket statement, but you can apply and scale these things to whatever band program, whatever size, and it works pretty unilaterally across. So
you would encourage directors. So the first step you would encourage directors to do might be to teach this to their students and have them make sure they can cover their student fees that way.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's right off the top too, because people's situations are different. Again, people have, oh, my parents can write a check, boom, done. And there are others who are like, I don't know how I'm going to pay this $200, like for the whole season. That could be cheap for some and expensive for others. How am I going to get to this? But you go through and you do, excuse me, I ate some wasabi right before I got on. You go through and you do that all the way through, and it works every single time, because it makes it awkward because you're trying to put pressure on people of different socioeconomic statuses, and having the same expectation across for them. For some kids, for some families, super easy. For others, tremendously a stretch. And instead of trying to say, figure it out, everyone gets the same, we can say, okay, here's a process. You don't have to publicize that you're doing this. It's embarrassing or whatever. But you can go through and do this, and it makes a substantial difference.
Well, how can directors access this? I mean, I know you just talked about it, but, to actually get the process and get like consultation and have these things written down and create a plan, like what's the best way for directors to kind of get comfortable with whatever this process is?
I wish I knew the answer. That there's no one in the activity who's doing this. Like I've done it with the small ensembles that I've done with, but it's not a widely adopted, like healthcare, education. These are two industries that rely very, very heavily on fundraising. The most funded in this country is religion by far, but it's easy. You have a weekly experience. You go to synagogue, you go to church, you're paying weekly into doing that. You're tithing or whatever. So that's number one by a lot. Number two are education and healthcare, and they have it dialed in. Like they have these very, very robust education and fundraising training programs where they execute these things, and the arts is behind. It's like a fourth of what they do. The industry is almost as big, but they just don't execute this thing. So that's a hard question. I don't know. I mean, if people want to get in touch with me, they're welcome to do that. I'm not saying I have all the answers or this is the magic formula, but it's tremendously more profitable, and it's easy enough that anyone can do it outside of, like, you don't have to have special anything. You just follow the steps. I mean, what I just listed pretty much.
So stop selling candles. Got it.
Stop selling candles, please. Because if someone's like, hey, I have the means, there's all kinds of tax law stuff going on. Like there's the minimum distribution age, which got raised or lowered from 72 to 70. So the people who are like on a fixed retirement income, they have to give away money this year or they're going to get taxed on it. So they say, I have $1,000. I've got to give it away to charity this year. And you come up to them and you say, hey, I want you to buy these mattresses, this candy, whatever you're selling. And the most they can spend is like $200 or $300, and it's still ridiculous. They're like, oh man, like I'd rather just write you a check, but since this is what you're asking, okay. Whereas if you went to them and you said, hey, I'd love to have you contribute to this campaign and buy us this. We'll recognize you in the following. We'll put your name on the truck. Like we'll put your name in the band room, wherever. We'll recognize you at this event, at the band banquet. We'll have a little honor thing for you, whatever. And that's a lot easier. It's not like it's so tough because we want to involve as many people as possible, and there's ways to involve as many people as possible. But if we can access the people who are the most fortunate in our communities and give them the opportunity and just ask, it will result in revenue, and we know it will every single time.
And so many of those people are looking for ways to give and ways to give back to their community locally. What do you suggest for band programs that may not have done this peer-to-peer asking before and haven't trained, but they say, hey, I've got this person in mind who I think would be good at executing this task. What are some things you look for in a person who would actually be good at that? Who a director who's watching this could say, this parent needs to be able to communicate X, Y, or Z as the expectation to this person, and also be sensitive and avoid one or two of these conversational topics in the process?
Sure. No, that's a great question. I think going down the list, you can have an appeal that goes out to all parents. This is not necessarily we're trying to find the best 5 fundraisers that are on the staff. We're trying to find the 5 most willing people to go and talk to people and to go and be a part of the process. So I'd say if there's one thing you can execute right off the bat, especially if you've never done it, is either to rally your band boosters to say, this portion of your job description as a band booster is fundraising, and it's going through and making lists and talking about prospects and fundraising in the way that universities and healthcare systems do. And if you don't have one of those already, find a champion. Send out a letter or send out a letter home, email out, whatever, saying, hey, we're looking to fund this. We don't need any fundraising experience, but if you want to volunteer, It's just a couple hours a month. It's not hard. It's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to end up raising this. We're going to be funding this. Come and meet with us. It might be on Zoom right now. Hopefully in another 6 months or so, it won't. It'll be in person. And you get people who are excited and interested, and just kind of sit down with a little orientation and saying, here's the plan. You know, we need $20,000. We need to upgrade the trailer in the following ways, or whatever the campaign. Pick something specific and saying, here's what we need. We need this many gifts of this size, this many gifts of this size. And then doing all of them the courtesy of a one-on-one ask, sitting them down saying, you know, I hope you could contribute a couple $100 to the campaign. It is so much easier to ask for money if you yourself are giving. For example, like if I said, hey, Elliot, I think you should contribute to our trailer campaign. You know, we're trying to get a trailer for Equinox. We'd love to outfit it, get all the shelves, storage, lights, the whole deal. And you say, okay, how much do you want? I said, well, $1,000. I mean, that would really get us ahead. And you say, well, how much are you giving us? I'm not giving, but I think you should. And you're like, well, if you don't believe in this, why would I? That's a hard conversation. And you know, you're going to get a no most of the time. Whereas if I say, hey, you know, Elliot, my wife and I, we've contributed $250. We'd love to have you join us at that same level. It's really important. It's for the kids. You know, we're putting it into an asset. This is going to have it for years and years. It's not just this year's kids. It's kids for the next decade. It goes a long way. We hope you could join us. And that's tough to say no to. So to get those people rallied, kind of step one is find your champion, find a couple champions who really want to take charge and do this. They don't have to have fundraising experience. They don't have to be experts, and get them to kind of get more parents involved, more volunteers. They don't have to be parents, and have a meet once a month on Zoom, talk about it and say, you know, we're not asking you to come up with creative fundraising ideas because we know they're not going to be profitable and they're going to waste your time and ours. We need you to talk to people. We need you to give. We need you to ask others to give. We're going to talk as a group of what people we can approach to do this, and we're going to make our goal as a result.
I love that. He makes it sound so simple.
It is. It just took all these thoughts that we had thought over the years and all the scars from trying to sell frozen pizzas as a sophomore that was trying to find their way, and all the people that turned us down when we knocked on their door.
Right. I think there's also that sense of people don't feel comfortable asking for money. When, you know, like the way you word it, it's kind of like you're putting it towards this, you know, match me kind of thing. You know, I think there's a stigma in asking for money. So that's why people would rather work for it and sell, you know, the candles and the Girl Scout cookies, you know, versus be open about it. This is our goal. This is what we're trying to achieve. This is what I've put in. Join me.
Yeah,
I love it.
And that is by far one of the hardest things. I'm really glad you identified that, because that's the thing that I struggle with at work is you get these awesome people who are great. And they're like, I just am really not comfortable talking to my friends about my money situation. I definitely don't want to talk to them about their money situation. So going a little deeper into fundraising theory here, we always divide people into 3 camps. So once we get kind of the team put together and we get everyone assembled and kind of have a quick orientation of like, here's the plan, here's what we're going to do, this is the recognition for giving at all these levels, whatever, is we say, okay, everybody has one of 3 kind of personality tendencies in fundraising: connecting, cultivating, and closing. Connecting, those are the people who know everyone. Elliot, you are a connector. It's people who not only do they know everybody, but they got everybody on their phone. They can call up real quick and say, yeah, I know so-and-so. I'll get you in there. It's just the people who are very extroverted. They're people. Then cultivators are people who are great storytellers. Sometimes they're very analytical, and they're very, very strong at kind of talking about the why. Here is why we need this. This is why it's so important for our program, for our guard, for whatever, to have this for the following reasons. And then you have your closers, who are people who are like maybe competitive, or they've been in sales before, or they have some level of comfort. I don't care, I'll ask for money, whatever. It's very rare that someone is great at all 3 of those. And instead of saying everyone has to do all 3, we say that's fine. If you're good at steps 1 and 2, that's what we're going to have you do. We're going to pair you up with people. So you maybe have 2 people go on a call together. One person tells the story and the other person asks for the money. Or one person sets up the meeting and the other person tells the story and asks for the money, or whatever. And hopefully that solves a little bit of that problem. And that's kind of step 1, is to not force people into the roles they're not comfortable with. Step 2 is doing a little bit of training and saying, you know, you don't have to have this crazy sales pitchy type thing. Literally show up, talk about why you're involved, talk about why you're giving, and ask them to join you. Like, there's no magic words in fundraising, but if there are, it's, will you join me at X level or Y level? It is so hard to say no to that. And even if they say, that's kind of a lot, this has been a year for us. Like, we would love to give more, but we're a little, strapped. It's 2020. We'd love to give in 2021. How about this lower amount instead? Yes, obviously, yes, 100% in. That's a win. And just kind of going through that process. So those are two ways that you can kind of combat that, but there's not a lot of ways around that. It's one of the toughest things that we deal with in the professional industry, and it's certainly one of the toughest things for band as well.
When you talk about levels, Jake, do you recommend that the director or whoever it is on staff that's coming up with this already have those levels that add up to the end goal set, and not just give an open-ended how much would you like to give, but make sure that it's locking in all these certain numbers, level 1, level 2, level 3?
Yes, is the short answer. So say the campaign, like the one we did this summer, say the campaign is $50,000. No matter how you try to ask what levels that you're going to get about the same distribution, like it's like the law of numbers. Have you seen the bell curve thing? That is going to apply statistically to fundraising perfectly. So you're going to have this many of this gifts, this many of this gifts, et cetera. So saying, okay, a $50,000 campaign, we definitely need $1, $5, or $10,000 gifts, maybe 2. We need 4 to 6 in the 5,000, 2,500 range. We need another 10 $1,000 gifts, and we need another 50 gifts that are smaller than that. And say, okay, on average, we're going to get 1 yes for every 2 no's. That's fine. So now we can do math and go down and say, this is how many prospects or prospective donors we need at each of these levels. And you go say, okay, great. Over the next 8 months, we have to talk to 78 people. We have 15 people on the committee. Okay, that means in 4 months, if they all talk to one person, we're most of the way there. It's not that much work. When you break it down and go by the numbers, they say, okay, that's fine. But you have these very specific amounts in mind. We always ask high. Donor survey from Blackbaud that came out last year, 60% of donors in 2019 would have given more if asked. They're like, oh yeah, sure, I would have given more. They asked for 10,000, they asked for 1,000. And I guess they didn't need any more because they didn't ask. So we will always ask high. No one ever says, how dare you think I have so much money? They might say, I'm flattered. Do you think I can do this amount? But we're really more in this area of a donor. And you say, that sounds great. So we always kind of ask high, but sometimes you surprise yourself. People go, okay, yeah, I think we can make that happen. We obviously don't want to make assumptions about people, but if you're unsure, ask high and see what happens. The other thing is having really specific recognition at every single level, having a kind of what we call professionally a gift acceptance policy. So like if someone gives a $10,000 gift, these are the 6 things, the 6 ways we recognize them. Recognizing someone is like you put their name on the truck, you give them a plaque, you recognize them at the banquet, you list their name on the website. These are all examples of recognition. We do use recognition to thank the donor. That's very important. But the real reason we do recognition is to draw attention to the program. If there's a bunch of parents and they see 5 or 6 names at the $1,000 level up on the truck or up on the website, they say, our name is a little suspiciously absent from that list. Maybe we should step up. Or, wow, look at all the people who've stepped up to this campaign. This must be really important. We need to be a part of this. The more we can make fundraising feel like joining something, like I get asked once, I don't get hit up 6 times a year. I get one big ask and it's for the whole year, it's for the whole season, whatever. Sometimes we even do multi-year campaigns. And all the rest of the interactions are just to say thank you. Then it's very, very positive. They feel like going into it, they're like, oh, I feel like I'm a part of something. I'm joining something. I'm on the team. And a meaningful gift, again, is different levels for everybody. It might be $25. It might be $5 for someone, whereas that's the same as $10,000 for another. And we don't want to make assumptions there. And those are just as meaningful. It's more about getting the high level of percentage participation in terms of people giving than, oh, my gift was this and his gift was that.
Yeah. I like when you say meaningful gift. One thing that I've learned is that never try to be the person's accountant, because a lot of people have insecurity about talking about money, and it's just as offensive to underestimate someone as it is to overestimate what someone is willing to give. Could you speak a little bit to the scarcity versus abundance mindset that you really need to have going into fundraising, and where you would be able to apply that and pull some of those resources from?
I was muted. Could you clarify that question? What do you mean by scarcity versus abundance?
Part of that, just a lot of us come at fundraising or come at the money conversation from a scarcity mindset, where we're thinking of the limited number of resources that are available versus thinking of the abundance that really is out there when we give ourselves the opportunity to do so, which part of that's overcoming some of our own mental hurdles about what's possible in the financial world. So you as a fundraiser, how have you gotten through some of those insecurities on your own for being able to do what you do?
Oh, okay. I totally understand. So we know that in every community, there's quiet money. Like the people who drive the flashiest cars and live in the biggest houses and have designer clothing are not always, and probably usually not, the people who are the most financially stable people. Maybe it's because they're insecure. Maybe it's because they like nice things. Not here to judge. But oftentimes it's the people who have worked hard, lived conservatively, saved money, it's a small family, whatever it may be, who have the means to do that. And they're often the most generous people. The other thing that we've learned is the people with the most money does not equal the most philanthropic people ever. It's always the people who, understand the need the most. A great example for healthcare. We'll do employee giving campaigns. So say we're doing a $1 million, $3 million cancer center. And we say, okay, we want the employees to participate at whatever dollar amount per paycheck. Without fail, 100% of the time, and we can predict this with every new town, everything we go to, the people who give the highest percentage out of their own paycheck and the most total people are maintenance, housekeeping, and dietary, the people who work in the cafeteria. The lowest minimum wage people by far are the most generous people in every single hospital in the country. And this is 100% true. No exceptions to this. And the higher up you go, the lower the percentage and the lower percentage of the salary that's given. It's because people are at that level understand. They say, oh, our job is to take care of the organization. We get this. We get giving. We've been there. If there's an employee assistance fund and someone's needed, that could be my friend. It could be my mom, my neighbor, my sister, whatever. And they understand that. So going out and knowing that even if it's a small town, even if it's very rural, even if you think, oh, we're a fairly poor community, people aren't going to step up. It's like, statistically, there are people who have quiet money, and the reason they've never given is because they've never been asked. The number one reason people give is not what the project is, how much, any of that. It's who asks. 100% the reason. If someone who you trust, a peer, asks you for something, that is 10 times more meaningful no matter how passionate you are about a project. Like if you ask me about this campaign, hey, I'm doing this thing for this thing, I go, I have never heard of that organization. I don't know what the heck they're doing, but I know you. And if you're this bought into it, if you're both giving your time and you've given a donation yourself, I guess it must be pretty important. Sure, I'll help you because of the trust there. So just knowing that if you can get enough people involved, enough people on your team to be just dedicated to fundraising. Again, it's only a couple hours a month. You don't need to have these people work for you full time. The law of numbers, you're going to access everyone in the community who might have a passion for this and who'd be able to give.
That's awesome. Do you want to take this time to maybe answer some of questions?
Yeah. Let me go down the list of ones that I got, and then we can open it up. I'm sure there's probably ones in the chat as well.
I'm going to let Eddie pop in while we're looking.
Yeah, one from you is, how do you make fundraising feel like not a chore? Make it feel like joining something. Big time is to make it feel like you're becoming a part of something, and don't do so many. That's the number one thing is don't do 5 fundraisers a year. Don't do one. One, big dollar amount, big campaign, something specific. You'll raise 10 times the amount than chipping away at all these. Not to say you shouldn't do like the percentage nights or do the online campaign for this. You can do all those things, it's fine. But the things that are time consuming for your students and volunteers, get rid of those. Do one big thing that'll make 10 times the money. Next one is Dylan asks, what are some tips on fundraisers that do not include something tangible that individuals can buy? Hopefully everything. Hopefully 100% of your fundraising is something that you're not buying. There might be recognition items. You get a little something. You can get a Christmas ornament. You get a limited edition t-shirt, whatever. That's fine. You can do that in recognition. But hopefully none of your fundraisers are you're buying into something and you get something out of it. Christopher asks, do you have fundraisers with good turnout for smaller marching bands? And I think, by the way, this question is asked, again, mindset is we're holding a fundraiser, which again, we would like to get out of that mindset as much as we can and move into we are doing fundraising. We're not doing a fundraiser. We're doing fundraising for our group. Kyle asks, we feel like we're killing ourselves doing a million little fundraisers. Yes, you are. And I'm so sorry. How do we land some of those big sponsors? Same kind of thing. If you have a dedicated group of people who are really, really excited about what you're doing, more than likely someone knows someone who is the decision maker at a local business. Set up a meeting, sit down with them, be honest. Hey, this is what we're doing. We'd love to have you guys in at $5,000. We'll put your logo on the truck and on the website. We'll talk about you as a sponsor when we host the band competition. It's for the arts. It's a good look. You get a plaque to go in your place of business so people can come and see in the community that you support the arts. We'd love to have you join us. And just getting access to those key decision makers. Like if you want to get a gift from your local Publix, going in and talking to the manager on staff or the cashier is probably not the approach. You probably need to know somebody who's super in charge, and having someone in the community who's connected makes a big difference there.
Jake, I have a question for you.
Go ahead. Yeah.
This is based off something you've told me.
Okay.
We were having a conversation, I think with virtual arts when it was first starting up. And you said something to the effect of, if somebody's willing to give $1,000, that's not their last $1,000. So far we've talked about getting that first donation from someone. How do you keep people in retention in this pool for continuous giving, so you make it a sustainable goal for your program long-term?
Yeah, great question. It costs on average about 7 times to get a new donor than to keep an existing one. This is in obviously big fundraising programs, but the application for time is identical no matter what the size of what you're doing. We very much want our repeat givers to keep giving. It's 2 things: doing a great job with recognition and not hitting them up multiple times a year. If you have a campaign, you ask that person one time. If they give you a gift, you take the gift. The rest of the year is thanking them. For the next campaign, you can come back and ask them to renew their pledge. They need to get into the mindset that if Elliot Cleveland calls, it's to say thank you, or how awesome they are, or how thankful they are for those gifts. There are donors. I'm only on the board at Equinox now. There are donors at Equinox that I still call once a year. I have it on my calendar. Like they gave a gift in 2016, and I still call them, hey, Mr. So-and-so, Mrs. So-and-so, just want to tell you how genuinely appreciative we are. We're very financially stable. It's largely thanks to you, your efforts, and your family's efforts. I'm just so thankful. So they get used to that. And it's not fake. you really want that kind of relationship, to have that kind of re-up and make them feel like they're involved. The more you can feel like it's joining something, come be a part of the team, come do this together, invite them to events, invite them to things that you're doing. So they say, hey, this was a great deal. Like, we gave them money to do this. We saw this happen. It was a tangible result that we got, and we got to be a part of this awesome thing. I mean, especially when we get back together, like the whole band culture is awesome. Even in high school, it's awesome. And to give people who are not performers the opportunity to be along for the ride for all that is invaluable. Great question.
This has been good.
Yep. Yeah. I've got 3 more here from Facebook. One from Mackenzie. How does one safely fundraise during a pandemic? Zoom, peer-to-peer fundraising. You can do it just like this. It's not ideal. You'll want to get yourself a nice light. Otherwise, you look like this. You want to get yourself a mic if you can, and frame yourself nicely. If you want to divide the picture into thirds, your eyes should go on the top line. There's like little, hacks and stuff you can do for Zoom. Eddie, Michael, Elliot, all of you guys are doing a great job with it. Yeah, a little low. The rest of us, pretty good. But see if you can optimize your Zoom setup and just get comfortable. Like, we all do a lot of Zoom calls. They're annoying. We've got at least another 6 months of this, so figure out how to make it work. And then, but know that whatever campaign you're starting, if you're starting a year-long campaign right now, more of that campaign will be outside of COVID and outside of quarantine than in it. And that's very encouraging. That's something I tell all my clients too. They get very discouraged. I'm like, listen, this is a 3-year campaign. Most of it's going to be fine. We just got to get to the next 6 months. Next question. Alyssa asks, how do you effectively fundraise year round for fall and winter groups that are relatively or overwhelming or relatively small? Same kind of thing. One big fundraiser a year, one big goal. Approach your donors one time for one gift. Have them pay it in pledges if you can. Saying, hey, we'd love to have you consider a gift of $1,000, but you can pay that monthly. We can set that up in installments of $186 for the next whatever months. You can pay it on an auto deduct credit card if you want. You don't have to even think about it. It makes it better for your tax year or whatever you want to do. As long as we can account for the money, we're fine with that. So having kind of a monthly giving program set up, if you have the ability to set those up, goes a long way. Huge.
Mm-hmm. I got one last question for you.
Go ahead.
I've had a couple people tell me this, and I want to know how you feel about it in the fundraising world.
Sure.
That this is different than our current financial situation is different than it was in 2008 as far as the recession goes. And it's not that people don't have the money, it's that they're just holding it a little closer. And like you talked about, being more precise about what they're choosing to donate to.
Sure.
So how would you speak to the people who are thinking that, man, I would love to do a fundraiser this year, but I just don't think that people have the money to give? How would you approach that conversation so we can overcome some of those self-doubts, because we're really limiting ourselves before we even open ourselves up to the conversation with our community?
Let me unmute myself. First is, for the first quarter of this year, giving was actually a little bit down overall nationally. Second quarter, way down, obviously, people a little panicked. Third quarter, as in the one that we were just exited, basically, was up compared to 2019. People gave more in that slot of 2020 than they did in that slot of 2019, and giving is up for this quarter as well so far. We don't have all the numbers in yet, but you would think that giving would be down, but 70% or more of donors plan to give the same or more. A couple other fundraising facts, because I enjoy these a lot. 30%, 30, of all giving happens in the month of December. All the money that gives in the country, month of December. 11% of all giving happens in the last 3 days of the year. So if you're not taking advantage of those year-end gifts, I would highly, highly encourage you to have something, a mailer that goes out to talk to a few people, ask some people, go to the people who you know are your best donors, ask them to support you in this year, whatever it may be. I thought the same thing. I thought giving would be down. I thought COVID giving would be tough. We were very panicked about it as an industry. And then the data showed that people are giving fewer gifts and bigger gifts, which is, I think people are just being more selective about where their money goes. So they're saying, oh, we usually support 3 charities. Now we support 1 or 2. We're going to give about the same amount of money, but we're actually making bigger gifts to fewer charities. So you really just have to kind of make the top of the list, and people who have supported you in the past are still supporting, which is wild. I don't know why. I can't explain that one, but that's what the data showed for this year, and it's really encouraging.
What do you recommend for the year-end campaigns? Would it just be as simple as, hey, we're doing a year-end giving campaign, give what you feel at this point? Or
I would go with amounts and have, specific things that happen to those amounts. Have a $250, $500, and $1,000. Here's what you get at each of these levels. It's a t-shirt, it's a thing, you get recognition on the truck, the website, you get invited to this virtual whatever, which is exclusive. It's tough because you have to incentivize those who have a little bit more means, and that's awkward and it's difficult. The way we get around that is seeing if you can have some kind of event or thank you that is for all donors. Again, $5 for this person might be more than $10,000 for this family, and we have to be aware of that. But we do want to give a little special extra recognition to incentivize going to those top levels. So just an email appeal, a mail appeal that goes out to your parents. Big time. I mean, that's a double, hopefully, or ish, around the number of members that you have, and just trying to say, hey, as you're going through your holiday giving this year, we'd love to have you think about us. Here is why. This is the specific thing we're fundraising for, and that's what we're doing. And we found that to be fairly effective.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Jake. This is really helpful for us and a lot of people.
Yeah, you just simplified the whole process. Like
trying.
It's scary for a lot of people. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I really want the industry to be better at fundraising. Like, the information is there, the experts are there, the professionals are there. It just hasn't leaked into the arts as much as it is needed to in the last really decade and a half. If you want to ask me more questions or want more time, if you want to chat, I'd be happy to contact people. If my, I'll give the virtual arts email is info, if you want to put this in the chat, at virtualartsinc.org. That's info at virtualartsinc.org. So if you have any questions or things that I can clarify, or just want help with your band program, I don't have like a business or anything that I do for band. I want to help. I want this to be better. I want our industry to be better at this. So.
Use the subject line fundraising so he knows what it's about.
I guess so, yeah. They'll get me excited, like, oh, someone's going to give us a gift now.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Jake.
Yes. By the way, when we were bringing you on, it was going to be to talk about virtual arts that everyone else knows. And then he said, I really want to talk about fundraising.
I just know more about fundraising than anything else, to be honest. That's the only reason.